welcome everybody.
So welcome everyone to the fourth and the last actually Meet the Expert Thursday meeting when we have the chance to meet the experts of the week and have the opportunity to discuss with them various aspects based on their lectures, and they will gladly respond to our questions. So without further ado, let me just share the screen in order to check what we have been doing the previous week. So as usual, I would like to ask you to keep your camera on, your microphone off, and the chat box open where you can keep posing questions. Vicky just shared in the chat also the Slido that we have been using throughout the entire week in order to ask questions to the week experts. This is the fourth and final week of the Asterousia Hybrid University. This week we focus on education, especially on education for sustainable development. Following the weeks that we have, just to give you the overall framework, in the first week we talked about the general framework around the Biosphere Reserves and the SDGs. In the second week, we gave insights on management, communication, and branding. We talked also about the cultural landscapes. In the third week, we focused on coastal water and marine topics. We focused also on the ocean literacy and the UN decade on the ocean. And we started already reflecting on several aspects of ESD, of educational materials, basically that we use to interpret the marine environment. But this week we will focus more on ESD. So like the previous time, we will following this welcome, we will go through what we have covered in the past weeks, and then we devote around 30 minutes or a little bit more to give the time to the experts to respond to the questions. And then for the next 40 minutes, we will have a breakout room exercise based on a question around ESD. So just to remind you, last week in the group work we did, we focused on what it means to be ocean literate. And these are some of the concepts that you have brought about in your groups that are clustered in this slide. And you can find this slide also in the learning content of week 3. Responding to the evaluation that you have made in the week 3 learning material, so far we have no negative comments. We have only positive ones about the plethora of the educational material and the lectures and the discussions. Some people found interesting the emphasis on microliter that we should give while doing a beach cleanup. And some people thought positively of the sequence and the topics that we use week by week. But of course, we understand that not all of you are done with week 3 content. So we will be expecting more evaluation comments as you conclude your work. Now, in this week, our final week, we started with Professor Skoulos' lecture on the evolution and basic concepts around ESD, starting from some decades ago and coming up to today. There was a second lecture on ESD and its importance specifically for biosphere reserves. Mr. Bernard Combe from UNESCO gave us the overall framework of this inspiring ESD for 2030 agenda that is now in place. And we are very glad to see him online. He's here with us. And then we focused on how to run a project on ESD. So for the inexperienced ones, where can they start from? And we also talked about how to encourage active participation and learning, engage learners in this process. The second part of the week was devoted to youth. So there was a series of youth-led initiatives. There was an introductory lecture by Mrs. Jing Fang, who is also here with us. I see her, around the role of youth in the MAP program. And then many young people from the Mediterranean and beyond gave us input on their youth-led projects. I see we have with us here today also Irini, who participated in the Youth Climate Summit, and Catherine, who actually set up a summer university 3 years ago. It was in 2019. So besides Professor Skoulos, whom you all know, we have with us today Mr. Bernard Combe, who coordinates the implementation of UNESCO's Education for Sustainable Development for 2030 priority action areas. As you have seen, there are 5 priority action areas in this initiative, on accelerating local level actions and on empowering and mobilizing youth. He also works on reinforcing cooperation with other agencies and stakeholders in communication, education, and public awareness in the areas of biodiversity, water, oceans, cities, and sustainable lifestyles. Xing Fang from UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science, Culture in Europe, that's based in Venice, has been working for 5 years in the area of biodiversity and its related convention and program at national and international level, as we said, for actually 5 years. Catherine is an environmental scientist at the Bulgarian Biodiversity Foundation, has been working on Biosphere Reserves in Bulgaria for the last 6 years, and was part of the team which prepared the nomination forms for the 4 newly established BRs in Bulgaria. She was the main organizer of the Summer University at the Central Balkan BR in 2019. And Irini, our last representative from the youth, is a forester with an integrated master's in forestry and natural environment, and currently pursuing her master's in sustainable management of forest and natural ecosystems at the University of Thessaloniki. She has been highly involved in several projects related to biodiversity, nature protection, and climate change, and she attended the first UN Youth Climate Summit in New York, as a MAB Youth UNESCO delegate from Greece. So I think I will stop here and give the floor to Vicky in order to introduce you to the poll questions.
Hello all from me too. We started with our first poll that is, as you may remember, we are asking you again about your progress within the course. So please let us know from 1 to 4, how much have you progressed so far in the course? Are you still in week 1? Are you still working in week 2 or 3, or are you working in the last 4th week of the course? So I see some answers already. Almost half of you have replied. Please reply all. It is important for us to have a clear picture from your engagement in the course so far. I will leave it for a few seconds because I see that you still reply. And it seems that most of you are already working in the 4th week, while 6 from you have already completed it. Congratulations. I will share the results with you now. Okay, so we are in good track. We will move on with the next poll that is about education for sustainable development, ESD for 2030, this new global context for ESD that Mr. Combes has presented to you during week 4th. And we would like to ask you, how much have you included or integrated parts and elements of this context within your work, within your programs, your projects, and ESD activities? So again, you reply from 1 to 4. 1 stands for not at all, I'm still working on it. 2 is a little bit, have placed some hints here and there. 3 is I have already included some key parts, let's say in the trainings or in prioritizing the local actions or in the policies work. And 4 is about integrated, that you have integrated it to a large extent. I see that you still reply, so I will leave it for a few seconds. Okay, I will share now the results of the poll. I hope that you can all see it. It seems that we are still in the start, most of us, that we try to adapt and include the very first elements of ESD for 2030 within our context. In any case, we are still in the very beginning. And last but not least, the last poll for today will be about youth and youth engagement, again within your own context. So we kindly ask you to reply in your own working context or research or activities. How much do you engage young people? Again, reply from 1 to 4. I think that the replies have stopped, so I will share with you the results. And it seems that most of you who are participating today in this particular webinar, the youth engagement is quite an important part and element of your working context and your activities. Most of you replied that it is actually part of your organization strategy, or that you applied it quite often. That's very nice news, good news. So I will stop sharing the poll and I will give the floor. I will give the floor to Iro. Back to you, Iro.
Back to me. So glad to see that you are engaging a lot with the young people. This is very exciting and it's very good news for us. And obviously we have some things to do to speed up what we are doing with ESD for 2030 framework based on this poll, on your responses. And so we are very happy to have with us the person behind, one of the key persons behind these initiatives, Mr. Bernard. But I don't know, maybe Professor Skouras wants to say welcome before we give the floor to Bernard to...
Welcome, and I'm very glad that we have this meeting again. I think next week I'm going to ask if we continue, but it's very nice meeting you again. And it's also nice having Bernard and Catherine and Jing and Catherine, Irini, everybody with us. So let's continue, and we'll discuss when we'll reply to the questions we have.
So Bernard, you have seen the questions. Should we start from you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Yes, I've seen the questions. Some of them very familiar. So yeah, to reply to some of those questions, well, as the polls showed, some of you have started, some of you are a little more advanced in trying to integrate some of the elements and principles that the ESD for 2030 framework brings forth. So a question of, is 10 years enough to change? Well, for some things it should be enough. We should be able to move, but for other elements, it will take much longer. Changing the way we train or teach people, I'm sure that even in less than 10 years, we can make some changes to that. I think the COVID pandemic has shown us already that from a summer university where you are physically within or near a biosphere reserve, you can move to a summer university where you are online and you talk to each other on Zoom. The thing that is going to take a bit longer to change is within the education system, we're all saying we need to talk more about environment within the school programs. But changing a curriculum takes a long time. It involves, of course, the ministry people, the people who write curriculum, the teachers. So that 10 years might not be quite enough, or it might be enough to have a new curriculum, but it's just a piece of paper. What is important is what happens in the classroom, what happens in the visitor centers, what happens out there in the field. So there was a question about, can we have an example of transformative learning? This new terminology, because especially last year, everybody was talking about transformative learning. And it's not always clear what exactly does that mean. Basically, for my, let me give you my interpretation of it. It's learning, it's education, it's training that helps you change things, helps you transform what is going on. So an example, I'll take an example from a pilot project we ran in Cambodia around the Tonle Sap Lake Biosphere Reserve. We started a training. We have developed this material called multiple perspectives for ESD for teachers. I'll put a link in the chat, that way you can see this document, this training. So we thought, okay, we will just do a pilot with training some teachers at the Tonle Sap Biosphere Reserve, and that will be what will be the project. But very quickly, in discussing with the UNESCO office in Phnom Penh, the ministry, both of environment and education, and the teacher training college, soon it was obvious that just training teachers with this new material was not enough, that the teachers needed to engage more. So actually the teachers did engage much more and came to the realization that a lot of the textbooks they were using were talking about biodiversity from all over the world, but very little about Cambodian biodiversity. And their reaction in discussion with their own students and the parents was, maybe the first thing we should learn is about the biodiversity around us before we go learn about what's happening in the Amazon forest or in the Great Barrier Reef. So they actually worked to document biodiversity in Cambodia, and they came up with a textbook which was endorsed by the ministry and now is used in all the secondary schools in Cambodia, where it's about Cambodian biodiversity and what can you, a teacher, a student, or a parent can do about it. And there has been, because one of the problems with the Tonle Sap lake, in part there was an issue of pollution, bad water quality. So that has changed because people have realized we need to take care of things around us. So for me, transformative learning, transformative education is just that. The teachers realized we are not really teaching what is really necessary. We need to adapt it to our local context and the local needs of our communities. That's one thing I would say. It's the same thing for training people who are going to be working in biosphere reserves. It needs to be linked to the local needs and realities of that biosphere. So that actually people, when they, even in the visitor center, when they leave, the visitors leave, they have a better understanding of what is that area and what are things you can do as a citizen to help better protect the planet. There was another question on, let me just check, just touching on some of the questions. Impressions of how basically ESD for 2030 is going. Well, I would say there's been a very positive reactions. Last year in May, we had the Berlin World Conference. We had up to 70 ministers of education who, in a way, committed to doing better and more on ESD. But since then, in Milan, at the pre-climate COP, we had a dialogue between young people and ministers of education. And then at the COP in Glasgow, we had a meeting with ministers of education and ministers of environment who said, yes, actually, we have to do more. We are committing to move climate and environment into the center of educational programs. Countries, we have currently about 50 countries around the world have said they want to do this country initiative on ESD for 2030. So what is a country initiative? It's kind of a, I would call it an umbrella initiative that brings together everything that is already being done in the country around ESD in different parts of society, not just the people who are environmentally conscious, the environmental NGOs or the ESD experts or the universities that have diplomas on sustainability, but any element that is working together. So about 50 countries have already progressed on developing that. There are about 30 or 40 more who have shown an interest. The challenge there when you're trying to do a country initiative, it's like creating a network. You need to bring people and they need to dialogue and understand each other and start using the same terminology to understand that, well, I'm doing this and you are calling it environmental education, but I call it, I don't know, citizenship education or environmental citizenry. It's also bringing civil society and government institutions together. Sometimes the dialogue is not always nice and not always smooth. So it's a longer term process. It's not just filling out the table and saying we have this, we have that. There was a question about creation of a hub or some kind of platform. Yes, there's a plan of having this kind of network of partners and actors. We are still in the brainstorming phase of how to run such a network, because the more people you have in the network, the more complicated it is to, one, exchange information, because nowadays there's so many possible web softwares that you can use to post information. We have some groups that prefer to dialogue with WhatsApp. Other groups, they want a structured web page where you can click and go to different rooms to chat. So this is still work in progress. We also have the issue of language. We cannot just speak in English. We have to talk in as many languages as possible. Already we have a difficulty with the 6 UN official languages to try and get discussions going. So it's also a question of when you're creating a network, you need to have something that's manageable around you, and then finding ways to pass the message further. See, there was some other question. First impressions. And also still on first impressions, the fact of having this new framework until 2030 for EST, in some countries it has created like to take the example of COVID, a booster shot to stimulate. I'll take the example of my own country, France. 2 days ago, a new national committee was created, a national committee for EST for oceans and sea, to focus on ocean education and ocean literacy. It's a national level committee created by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of the Sea, with actors from very strong research institutions, universities, foundation, NGOs, schools, including what we have in France. We have 250,000 éco-délégués in each school. A number of students are elected to be delegates on ecological environmental issues. And so this new committee is pushing the issue of we have biodiversity education, but often we forget to talk about the ocean and the sea, but to talk about it in a larger sense, not just the biodiversity of ocean, but the fact that behind the ocean, you have jobs that are linked to the ocean, you have cultural traditions that are linked to the ocean, you have to think about technology and innovation of how the ocean is already contributing to reducing, the carbon emissions. So it's a very wide ranging area, but it has created a boost within the French school system of, here's something a bit more concrete that we can actually do. And it's happening in some other countries where suddenly said, oh, EST for 2030, let's relook at what we're doing. Maybe we can do things differently. So I think I've covered more or less, if I'm not mistaken, many of those questions. Just one or two last comments. I think you have to keep thinking back to the question of, is 10 years enough? You have to remember that learning and education is throughout life. It's not because you've gone through this summer university that your education on biosphere reserves or whichever, all these topics is finished. You can continue learning throughout. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that we need to really have things that are more hands-on and more interactive. You need to talk, you need to dialogue with the players, the actors, the people who live, who work in biosphere reserves. So that's my quick reactions.
Thank you, Bernard. Thanks a lot. Thank you. You are with us.
Thank you, Bernard, for these thoughtful and insightful reflections on the questions posed. I think it was very useful for everyone. Should I give the floor to Jing? Now, let's go to the young experts we have with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Iro. Thank you, Vicky, for giving me the floor. And also thanks everybody for presenting here. And thanks, Professor Sculo, also Bagnac. And yeah, for me, I think it will be very straightforward because I have found like 2 questions, and they are basically in the same area. Let's say it refers to the youth engagement model, whether it will be like co-shaping as partner or a leader as like somebody who enable the initiative. So it also refers to the challenges in the projects that, let's say, with young people as leader. And so before starting, I would like to introduce this UNESCO guidance in meaningfully engaging with youth. That was something that I mentioned in the presentation. And in fact, we have this guidance, we have this existing structure for meaningful youth engagement. And it's basically, it's youth consulted, like from the a little bit low level and to the higher level. And as you can see, youth consulted, youth as partner, and then youth as leaders. And youth as leaders, as we can see, is the highest level that of the youth engagement. And that was also something that is the goal, we can say, that we are working on. And this youth engagement should sort of like go through the 4 phases from the very beginning, strategic level, initiative planning, delivery, implementation, and also monitoring and evaluation. That means the whole process of activities or events or initiatives. And that is the whole structure. And in fact, partnering with young people and work with youth leader, there are 2 sort of idea status that we would like to have. I would say they link with each other. First, we partner with young people. We work together. Young people give added value to the whole work, and also young people will be be given the chance to practice their ideas, and they can also get the experience. And then next time, if there is like same situation, same opportunity, young people will be able to lead parts of the work or the whole work. But I should say it's difficult. It's difficult because of a mixture of factors, including lack of capacity, lack of experience, and also lack of some proper support. Young people need to be empowered. They need to be given chance to start with, and then they can take lead on the whole initiatives. And if I may, based on our current work in science unit in our regional bureau in Venice, and our team is working to engage youth in different work and projects. In fact, young youth engagement is a cross-cutting part. It should be included in the let's say, different segment of our work. For example, we engage with young people, young practitioners who work on a nature-based solution. In our regional forum on sustainable development last year, all co-organized by UNESCO, UNECE, and UNEP in the framework of issue-based coalition on environment and climate change for the Europe and Central Asia region. And that is a regional task force consisting of 18 UN agencies. So we would like to hear the voice of young people in such, let's say, such platform, or to just try to make sure that their voices be heard. And also we included this young people's statement and suggestions in the final key messages submitted to New York. And we also, in the UNESCO blueprint Biosphere Reserve related webinar series organized by us and also MAPS Secretariat. We engaged young professionals, maybe some of them are also present here. We engaged them to work together on one of the 3 sessions that it named Amplify. So that means young people will amplify their voice. We also encourage young people to amplify let's say the knowledge generated in Biosphere Reserves. So these young people actively and contributed to these sessions, and we have very good results. We also engage young people in a lot of like projects, and we try to identify very good young experts and professionals for our work as well. I should say it's not easy, and we are on the way, and we hope that our work can contribute to this very good goal. Like all young people could work as leaders, and they will have the youth-led initiatives, and we will, as UNESCO, like promote and communicate these youth-led initiatives to our networks. And very best wishes to everyone, every young people who are present today. And I'm not sure if other youth experts would like to add comments or addings. And that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jing. I think your institution, UNESCO in general, but especially your institutions whom we know and collaborate with, are a proof of a continuous trial to engage in a meaningful way with young people, and all the projects that you presented in the lectures and all your initiatives, such as the MAP Youth Forum and all the opportunities that you give to young people from Europe and the Mediterranean, are a proof that this can actually take place despite the difficulties. And we have with us more youth that can prove that. So I will give the floor to Catherine, who attended a series of the previous Amber universities, and in 2019, she was faced with a challenge of organizing one. So let's hear from her.
Thank you, Ira. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, it was definitely a challenge. As I mentioned, first of all, welcome everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me. There was one question from me about whether or not there was a project that was born after the summer university. And I just want to say that my intention for organizing such an event was, of course, I wanted to have follow-up and to have activities and projects born out of it. But the main idea I had in my mind is to get the key stakeholders involved in the BR program. I wanted everyone to learn about this program. I wanted them to attend the university because I saw how great value such an event can have on me, and I wanted to make sure that more people get involved and benefit from such an event. So thankfully, there were some follow-up activities that were happening, even though there were, of course, local problems with the changes in the management bodies of the Biosphere Reserve. The director was changed, but nevertheless, the key experts that attended the summer university and took significant part in it, they were already inspired by the program, so they continued to believe in the project, and they developed some great ideas. One of it is happening at the moment. It's called Friends of the Biosphere Reserve, and it's focusing on developing a branding strategy. They have already established a logo with a competition with local people. There's also some other branding material, and they're now working with the local producers to get them become part of the program. and to support the Biosphere Reserve and also be branded as friends of the Biosphere, so their products can be branded in such a way. Of course, it's a long process. I was reading a report about Rion Biosphere Reserve in Germany that to have a product to be placed on the market successfully, it takes about 7 years. So I guess we're still in the beginning of this process, but I'm glad to see that the key stakeholders, they got involved, they got inspired, and they're now continuing their work on focusing on Biosphere Reserve and developing it as a project, as branding, as strategies, and everything else. And I think that was the only question for me. So then I'll give the floor to the next people. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing, and very happy to see that starting from the university, we can see them as an opportunity for bringing, as you say, people together, knowing about the concept of the BR, and why not linking it also to local product production and the actual market. This is really inspiring news. I will give the floor to our last youth for today, which is Irini, whom participated in the UN Climate Summit.
Hello, hello everybody. Hello, Iro, Vicky, Professor Skoulos. So my name is Irini. I'm a forester environmentalist, and I had the great honor to participate at the historical event, the United Nations Youth Climate Action Summit in New York in 2019. As a Greek UNESCO MAB youth delegate, representing my country, Greece, after being nominated by the Greek MAB committee. First, I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to Mediterranean Information Office and the UNESCO office in Venice for hosting Asterousia Hybrid University, despite all the challenges that we're facing right now with COVID. So it is with great honor that I'm given this opportunity to share my experience of my participation in the United Nations Youth Climate Action Summit. So on account of the summit and my involvement in it, it has initiated me to continue with my studies. I have finished my master's, which was on sustainable management on forests and natural ecosystems. During my studies, I had the chance to do a research project on climate change and to deepen my scientific knowledge on that topic. My master thesis was about marine debris pollution, as it was mentioned in this hybrid university as well as this topic. And I want to continue with PhD studies. Taking part in the summit has also helped me to broaden my horizons and share my experience and knowledge with others. And by getting involved in other youth organizations, I'm an active member of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, where we do a lot of events now virtually due to the situation. And we do have a lot of youth engagement activities and a lot of climate action activities. The summit has also inspired me to encourage and empower youth to make their voices heard in the global debate on climate change. I use it as a tool through social media to encourage youth. And in my free time, I'm one of the head team leaders. We have a hiking group in northern Greece. We organize hikes at Mount Olympus Biosphere Reserve. And during these hikes, we inform the importance of the BR and the environmental protection and the consequences of climate change on biodiversity. So coming back from the UN summit made me realize that there's still a lot of work to be done to engage the younger generations in climate action. We need to teach youth about how climate could affect their present and their future lives, and how their involvement is necessary in all aspects of our society, from a community level to a government level. Also, increasing communication and enabling more conversation are the most important pillars to raise awareness. and to strengthen the youth climate movement on a national and as well as international level. Throughout the summit, it made me more aware that youth should not wait for decision makers to bring change. We, the younger generation, have to take action now, and on a personal level and in Italy. And climate change is a battle of survival, and we're losing it. And time is definitely not by our side. So as it was emphasized at the summit, all youth from all countries must contribute towards a global effort by doing their share. And this is the biggest lesson I learned at the summit, which I'm truly trying to implement. So
Wonderful.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Irini, for being with us and for following this Asterousia Hybrid for the second time. So I will give the floor to Professor Koulos, who, by position, being the last expert to respond to the questions, you can respond to those that refer to you, but give also an overall reflection on what has been discussed so far.
Thank you, Iro. Thank you all for sharing your views and experiences and ideas. Allow me to start by giving sharing two or three ideas on what has been said until now. Perhaps, I don't know if Bernard is with us, I think, has realized some of the origin of this narrative of transformative. In the document we have prepared for the competences within the UNECE Steering Committee for Education for Sustainable Development, we have introduced already many years ago, and we are using it also in the Mediterranean strategy, the three competences of educators dealing with ESD. The one is to have the ability to envision the future. The second was to have a systemic approach to knowledge and experiences, bringing different disciplines and having this systemic approach. And the third was to be transformative. The educator who could, and this was the example used for Cambodia, I understand, an educator, the activities and the teachings of whom have an impact in making changes. This is the educator approach. But when we are talking about transformation, transformative education for a learner, then the change is in his/her behavior and attitudes. So this is why we have this sometimes difficulty in understanding, because when we are using one word for those who act and those who receive, at the end of the day, they interact, of course, but the initiatives many times could be transformative, or the impacts have this characteristic. So this is something I wanted just to offer, because I was a little bit responsible to a certain extent from this gray word as we have introduced it several years ago. Also, I would like to you know me, many of you, and I really believe in in youth and the young people and their dynamism and their talents and their enthusiasm. But what we need to remember is that wisdom comes with age. And it was always like that in all our history. And what is needed is actually the intergenerational relationships, which is lost because we don't have in the recent years the contact of the previous generation between grandchildren and grandfathers and so on and so forth. So yes, youth should be a very important actor, but you cannot expect judgment from someone who has no experience at all. So we need to put things in context always and don't move like a pendulum from one end to the other. In my generation, all politicians were older than 65 years old. My generation was lost altogether in between, because now we are moving to the other end. So there is always this balance that we need to have in mind. Now I move to the questions that I was asked. Most of these questions have to do with the profile of the educators dealing with, because we avoid to call sustainable development educators, because and this is part of my also reply here. I start from this. I mean, what actually Mayam asked this, what are the requirements to be here is a Biosphere Reserve trainer. The other question is, shall an educator in a Biosphere Reserve be a graduate of environmental or pedagogical sciences? Another one is, do we need to have non-formal education as a useful subject for students in environmental sciences? And the fourth is about, from Bevan, if there is, what is the progress, global progress in environmental education practitioners, and there are, and what are the future, the possibilities for a career on that? So I start by saying that all educators in the area of education for sustainable development and in Biosphere Reserves could have whatever background as first degree. It is useful to have, of course, environment as a background. If they don't have environment as a background, they have to be interested so that they learn and bring in the necessary understanding of the natural environment. But there is no exclusion. We can have whatever starting point. Sociology, even literature. What is important is the enthusiasm, the willingness to know, the love of what we are doing, the commitment to the scope of the protection of the environment, to have a better planet, to love people, society, and ourselves, offering genuinely our best. These are the important components. We bring the necessary elements like bees. We select what is necessary for the specific task if we have this quality. The quality is to be honest, respectful for the environment and the others, and give ourselves for the best. This is actually, in a few words, the ingredients for a good teacher, a good trainer, someone who is going to lead others, inspire others, and allow others to be better. So these are the elements. Now, a good degree to start are all degrees of natural sciences. Pedagogy is, of course, for educators. You cannot have all, so you bring the elements where you are strong and add all the rest. Is there a future for? Yes, I think we need, and we will need, many more people willing to work in biosphere reserves, in protected areas, interpreters of the environment, of the landscape, and many people of this with this background may end, as journalists or as producers of documentaires or different other things, not necessarily working within a biosphere reserve. I think that is important, and this is what we are doing also in the University of Athens. We include, even in the oceanography, let's say, courses, at least few lectures on interpretation, on education, and how they can use their knowledge and skills in informing and influencing others. So I think this is important for all curricula to include a part about the communication, education, and also the role of scientists, because many times scientists have to explain, because of their role, how to get involved in informal and non-formal education, and formal, of course. I think that I have covered more or less all the questions, and there is one more question about the 3 levels of human involvement that I mentioned. I remind you, my thesis is that all of us connect to the environment in 3 ways. Because of interest, self-interest for us and our families, as groups, because of us as social animals and viewing environment as social good, and these both are anthropocentric and have a direct benefit, and the ecocentric, which is the respect and admiration of the non-human. I believe that this third is the most important. It is the most, because the 2 first is a kind of giving and taking. It is very much closer to what of very, of immediate benefits. The third is what we need to develop more, and develop also to young people more, because we don't live only because of profit, because of benefit. the best things in our life have no price. So this is something on which we need actually to insist, to inspire, because these elements are the most inspiring for our lives and the lasting ones. We don't lose them, even when we are very poor or sick. So this is something important, and I think we have to enhance these qualities instead of quantities. And this is very, very important for those who deal with the environment and sustainable development. This is for me.
Thank you, Professor Skoulos, also for the thoughtful reflections. I think this was also very useful. Your combination together with Bernard Combe in this last webinar is really inspiring. And in order to not lose more time, and since we are already, both of you have already touched upon the issue of transformation and transformative learning in ESD, let me show you the question with which we will proceed in our groups. So let's go to the question. In the Berlin Declaration, we show that a phrase coming also in Mr. Combe's lecture, that transformative learning for people and planet is necessary for our survival and that of future generations. Both speakers, both Professor Skoulos and Bernard, touched upon the subject about transformative learning. This need to transform, to change the way we do things in order to make a change. So we will have about 15 minutes. We will split in 6 groups. Like the previous times, you will assign a rapporteur within your group and you will share your thoughts based on an example of a learning experience that actually has transformed you, starting from yourselves. So either from your experience or something that you consider that could transform you. So suggest any triggering factors for this transformative learning. How could it take place for you? What conditions could enable transformation? I hope it is clear for everyone. If Professor Skoulos wants to explain it more, you are free to do so. So we're talking about transformative learning in our groups, about experience that have transformed
Experiences
us,
or expectations?
And expectations of when this transformative learning can take place. I hope this is clear. And I will stop share and then ask Olga to. So I'm not sure if everyone is back. People are still joining in. Welcome. We hope this was useful for you, and we will start group by group with main points of the discussion. So let's hear from group number 1.
You can mute now as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So quite a question and limited time. Well, one thing that stood out for us is that in a situation of a crisis is when people act and there is change, and it gives the push for the transformation. However, one should also be the people that, or those drivers that are pushing for change, should also be prepared for that opportunities that allow for, I would not say a crisis, but an opportunity where there can be a major impact. One also has to be flexible to it, and then taking into consideration that even the small things that we do, but as a whole and as a mass together, doing these little small things can have a big change. For change is constant, and with social media and today's technology, it helps us to share these transformations or these actions that are happening that could have an impact again on people or on the world, because it showcases or it shows collaboration. And I think it's like the media when an actor or something, I don't follow much media or own a TV or watch TV, but an actor goes and buys a new pair of shoes, and then suddenly everybody's wearing that shoes or a shaving cream or deodorant or something like that. I think that is a good example. Then it's always important to go back to the roots of people and look at things from the bottom up, to not just say to, like, for example, in a community, this is wrong or that must change. It's to look, where does that action or the activities that they're involved from, where does it come from? What is the origin? And then how can you contribute to a positive change in that, with a buy-in from the community and not just saying you must. Then it's to, I think I've said that now really, is to be able to understand people and respect people, not just look and say that is wrong or this, that must change, but to look for that opportunities where you can have impact as a whole. So thank you very much. I hope I've done my group proud. Cheers, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bevan. Let's move to group number 2.
Hello, everybody. I'm Biljana, the reporter from the group number 2. So briefly, I will describe what we discuss in our group. So what is the expectation on when this transformative progress will happen in each of us? So the most responses were the first contact with environmental organizations, and then further development and introduction of these people sharing experience and learning from the best. Also here, it is like connected with taking participants in summer schools, especially the summer schools from this organization, because it's quite professional, and also inside involved a lot of people that are like expertise and full with knowledge. They share their experience and they teach the participants how to improve themselves in the places where they work or live in. Also, one very important thing for the people who are already living in these biosphere reserves is to get in touch with the older people, which they live many, many years before us, and to compare these experiences with how it was then and how it's going now, which this transformative process, when it's like retelling a story or implemented within some workshops or some educational lectures and stuff, it's quite touching and adorable, and can motivate other participants to get more in touch and involved with the nature, and to establish or to start to work with finding some natural places that can be like in the near future new biosphere reserves. Also, it is very important for us as participants or as specialists to be involved in decision-making processes with the governmental, local, or global authorities. This is very important because motivate people to long-lasting and to be more supportive in working with biosphere reserves. And a very important thing here are the influencers, the people who have the knowledge and the positive energy that can inspire the other people. So we can be more acting in preserving and working on the protection of our nature. And yes, more or less, that was it from our sides. Hope you like it. Thank you.
So your work was complementary to the first group. We already start to
Yes.
have a long list of factors. Let's hear from group number 3. I was in that group, and I think Elizabeth will give us.
Yes, hello, I'm Elizabeth, I'm from Greece. We discussed in our group what would be the triggering factors for change and what conditions would enable transformation, personal transformation. We had these ideas, an input that changing a working environment and trying to getting to work with local communities from a management agency member working with local communities, that interaction with the local communities and the experience that they bring into the effort of managing a site was very important in bridging science knowledge and the experience of people that live there. And that was that led to a transformation in how to manage a site. Hands-on experience from people that live near a forest. One member of our group lives near a forest, and she and her family and friends started cleaning the forest, and this became a habit. And this habit led to a behavioral change, and they started to care more about the condition of the forest and the environment in general. So a habit that changes into something more substantial. And another member of our group was studying on a university which was inside Biosphere Reserve. So being able to study inside a protected area made her more involved in the protection of the area, and she stressed the importance of environmental education inside the community. And my personal input is that my personal need for a change, as I live in the city center, led me to seek another vocational training on nature guide. And this was coupled with the passion of my instructors. So the passion of my trainers helped me transform into more active, let's say, citizen. Thank you, from Group 3.
Thank you. Wonderful. Let's hear it from number 4, group number 4. We can't hear you, Professor.
No, Nicholas, you are muted. Nicholas will present.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
This happened automatically because I didn't. Okay. In our group, we discussed about the transformational experiences. We mentioned that like a visit to a place can transform, like a richer environment or an ecosystem different to our local, to what we are used to, can give us the potential to the image of the potential that this the nature has. Also, like events like an oil spill was mentioned as experienced by a member, and observing the environment to decrease and after that to recover gradually, that also give us the potential. Surely this was a transforming experience, and that the member said that this leading his was guided to finally choose his career for that, to help the environment to have a healthy, be in healthy situation. Also, connection with other groups from different places, a joint experience for farming it was mentioned also to the experience was exchanged with the group from the United States, as I remember, and also the collection of plastic debris to use them for reuse was also mentioned from another member. All these were discussed in this group, and I could realize the excitement each one was transferring to others. So it was surely, I believe that was very very crucial for their life. Okay, that was the output. Okay.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And let's hear it from group number 5.
So hi, so I'm Tishala, and in group number 5. So we did talk about our personal experiences, what motivated us to sort of make that change, to want to do better. And a lot of people said that we need to understand the cultural and natural value of where we live to sort of appreciate it, and that you have to go outside. You need to go outside and get it done. That's the only way I think that people are going to see the bigger picture, because if you're inside, you're not going to see anything. And my personal experience was because I work with large marine mammals. We had a stranded dolphin. We kept her alive for about roughly 2 weeks. But when we did the necropsy, we saw the amount of trash, I guess you could say, that was in there, like plastic. So even though we were feeding her, she wasn't digesting the food. And so I don't know if you guys ever work with them, and if you're holding an animal and you're just watching the animal slowly die and there's nothing you can do to stop it, like that for me definitely was like, okay, let's get out there, let's do this, let's get to the children, because for some reason the little ones are the ones that cost their parents and adults to do better. So you will find that they will say, okay, well, mom, let's use a recycle tote. Don't throw it out the window, don't litter. So by going after the younger generation, that's our approach, that we're going to make a difference. And if you share your experiences, you make that connection, is what helps people to transform. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Salak, for bringing this in. And I hope for sure this is shocking experience that you mentioned and can be truly transformative. Let's find also other means to transform ourselves. But let's hope that the transformation cannot only be generated by trauma, but it can be generated by positive things as well. So let's hear it from the last group, group number 6. There is another group, or we are done? I'm sorry if we are done, Olga says. Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. So I would invite Professor Skoulos, maybe Bernard also, to make some reflections.
Bernard first.
Some reflections. I think this is just the beginning of a dialogue on what is transformation, what is transformative learning. But I think, as I mentioned in the subgroup I was, I think it forces us to think first that, as I said, learning, education is lifelong, can take place anywhere, any place, any age. But also, for it to be transformative, we need to have three elements. It needs to touch our head, so knowledge, and all that. It needs to touch our hands, needs to be hands-on, concrete, practical, but it also needs to touch our heart. It needs to be that social, emotional connection with, first of all, each other, but then with what's around us. So we have to keep that in mind. And we have to keep in mind that we need to, basically, education and learning is about being able to adapt, to be flexible, to remember the creative side of things, to have this dialogue, this connection, to because basically these types of summer schools is to create a community of people who work on similar issues, have come to know each other through the course, and to keep that connection going, because that's how we can progress and we can transform, by interacting with each other. And basically, yes, the current new framework is until 2030, but there are many frameworks that are being discussed. One of them is the post-2020 biodiversity framework, which is still in discussion, and hopefully the decision will be taken sometime this year, which it also moves beyond even 2030. So we also have to keep in mind the longer term. But as Professor Skoulas was saying, we also need to keep this intergenerational dialogue ongoing, and just to keep talking, keep working, and just remember. So as I said, and heart and mind need to work together to transform education. Those are my kind of concluding thoughts.
Thank you, Bernard. You said it all. You left very little for me. The only thing I want to add to what Bernard has subscribed to everything he said is that because, as also Iro said, we have to search also for positive, not only traumatic experiences that may change us. We need to take one of the, again, through UNESCO, one of the competences for learners learning to learn. Actually, we need to teach to our students, our learners, how to select experiences that can inspire and change not only them, but others. I think we need this kind of selective spirit from so many things around us, to select things that can actually be starting points for something. And there is so much information, and also pollution from information. And we need more and more to select things that can actually be transformative. This is a talent that we need to develop among learners. And I think this is one of the areas where transformative teaching and transformative learning needs to focus a little bit more. And I'm very glad that we had this short starting dialogue. And I thank everybody for the contribution and for the interest. We are going to continue with the support of UNESCO, these universities, because what we receive back as comments are very inspiring. So thank you very much all.
Thank you, Professor. And thanks everyone for joining us live. As always, we are going to post this video later tonight to be available on YouTube to those that were not with us. It was a rather insightful discussion also this week. I remind you that as you finish your working week in the 4th week, you have 5 scenario, 5 options for your final assignment. We see already some of you have started submitting their assignments, and the deadline for this is next Sunday, 13th of February. With this, I would like to ask you to turn on your cameras for the last time this year to say Bye-bye for now. Thank you for being with
Goodbye.
us.
Thank you for everything. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much for this.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks all.
Bye, Shalene.
Bye. Bye, Antonia.
Bye.